You guys voted for brain cancer. Just this isn't on me, all right? I wash my hands of it. I am but a purveyor of brain rot. Okay. You guys didn't even ask like, "Oh, what kind of episode is it?"
This is the
It's black conservatives versus white liberals. This should go well. Yeah, you're all gonna love this. Yeah, I'm sure.
This is the 112th episode of Middle Ground, and we want you to help us decide what the next 112 episodes will be. Join our Middle Ground Patreon community and make Middle Ground with us.
I was chosen to read the following prompt. White Americans have way more advantages than Black Americans.
I think I'm a rarity here.
It would seem so.
Do white Americans have more advantages because they're white, or do just white Americans have advantages because of historic factors? I think that people want to argue at the end of the day over whether it's because you're white or not. I think that the answer is because you're white in the past, and that's how it kind of carries over to today. You know, even in times of the United States history where black people have tried to build wealth, you know, with the Tulsa riots and everything, yes, where, yeah, that this wealth has been destroyed. And something that's upsetting to me is when conservatives talk about how we can't blame the past for what's happening in the present. That is true to some extent, but then the next breath they'll talk about how important it is to have dual parent.
God, it's so weird seeing him around like people who talk normal speeds. It's like watching the Flash at work.
Households, how important it is to have a strong family, to have responsibility passed on from parent to child. And we've seen in the past that because of racial issues, that process has been severely disrupted.
The funny thing is that agreeing with all these things is when I did my research when I was younger, which arrived me to my standpoint of being a conservative, because I believe.
No, I imagine Destiny is gonna do okay here. Like, he knows what the audience of Middle Ground is.
It was racist, Democrat, liberal ideologies and policies dating all the way back to the 1800s, all the way up to the 1960s, and then the purported big switch. But I think it was more so when Democrats decided to be a bit more cloak and dagger about their true opinions of black people and be more secretive and more, oh, we want to help you by, you know, doing these things and seeing them as inferior.
Doing what things?
Affirmative action, welfare, all sorts of things that
welfare.
eventually ruin our culture and place us where we are now.
So,
Alec wants to fight. Alec wants to fight.
But I want to get back to the history of it, because we're talking about.
Well, I just want to make sure we're clear. Giving them money hurt them, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, giving them, because if your father's out of the home, that's when we give you the money. If you're living in this housing,
so then give them the money while the dad's
rent-free,
well, then
that's
give
how
them
you
the
get
money
more of
while
the
the
money.
dad's in the home.
If you're working
So
this
give
amount of
them the-
hours and getting less than this amount of
You're
dollars,
throwing-
you're getting money
you're
from the
throwing
government.
the
Yes,
baby-
it is
you're
incentivizing.
throwing the baby out with the
it is-
bathwater.
I don't even know what that means in this scenario, because yes,
You're
okay, you
throwing
want to talk about throwing babies out
okay,
with the
let me break this
bathwater?
down for
Margaret
you.
Sanger wanted to exterminate.
Jesus Christ, dude! It is a pretty well-known saying. Oh dear. Yeah, this is gonna be Margaret Sanger, black genocide of babies, eugenics, etc.
The black race because she thought they were weeds. So yeah, we can literally talk about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's what Margaret Sanger, that's what Democrat policies wanted to do.
Well, no, because the reason one would throw the baby out with the bathwater would have been the you know, the lack of abortion care. Anyway, you guys wanted this. Please subscribe, like, comment, and subscribe for my pain.
To my people. So that's why I feel so strongly about it, because it is these policies that date back centuries that were built off of the death and poverty of my people.
Let's take a breath.
Sure. I'm breathing.
Okay.
So a lot of babies aren't, but I am, sadly.
I don't know what that means. When I say throw the baby out with the bathwater, you want to completely get rid of welfare, okay? Or at least I don't want to put that on you, you haven't said that, but the conservative apparatus does, clearly. So giving money to a group of people does not hurt them.
I'm sorry, Paladin. Chat voted for this. and they haven't even subscribed to get me to unbutton one button. I'm angry at you guys.
I mean,
It
sure, if
can't.
you're talking about a lottery,
It
just, hey,
literally
take
can't.
money. But
Yes.
there are strings
Take money.
attached to that money.
Take all the
there
money.
are strings attached
Give
to
them
that money.
millions. Make them all millionaires. I don't care. Giving money to black people does not hurt them.
And that has
thinking
not
that-
happened, though. That has not happened.
What do you mean?
That has not happened. It hasn't been a
You're saying
reparations, it hasn't been this
so
or that.
what
It has
you're
been a
saying
welfare program,
welfare
Great
was
Societies
designed.
Act, that
Welfare
was
was-
built off of the idea of, hey, we get these families split up, we get these
So
people
then let
living
them
here.
keep the family together and keep all the money.
I mean,
There you go.
I guess
Boom,
so,
done.
but I guarantee you
I guess
there's
so.
no way that
Why
would
would
happen.
you not advocate for that?
So, in your, I guess, research of like history of this country and everything, do you find like
No, I have acceptable clothing on underneath this. Paladin.
the Reconstruction era and like the failures of like what it wanted to be and then what it ended up being, and then which led
Wait, just out of curiosity, do they have like the social links for any of these people? Oh, it's Alec Gunther! Oh, friend of the show! My bad. I didn't recognize him in the Jubilee lighting. Gotcha. Well, Alec, I think you're doing a good job handling someone who really overreacted to the common phrase "baby out with the bathwater." Okay, we got Real C Crump. Who is this? 18-year-old Gen Z commentator, 5-time Billboard charting artist, world's youngest independent artist to chart #1 on Billboard. What? How? Who the fuck is that? Okay, I don't know music things. Maybe this is real. I don't know. I don't pay attention to music. Okay. Anyway. So that's Mr. Crump there. Jay Richter. Jacob. Oh, interestingly, the social media link for Destiny goes to his Instagram. Yeah, that's what he's known for. And we got Solon Smith. Who's this? Okay. All right. Anyway, you guys wanted brain rot. Here you go, brain rot.
into, which, had downstream effects to enter into the Jim Crow era. And, you have policies like redlining that influence,
My critique so far is like, this seems to be putting like the cart before the horse in terms of like where the question is so far. I don't know. This seems like stuff for like the conversation where everyone's involved. I don't know. I'm just saying.
how schools are funded. The downstream effects of slavery, do you think put black people as generally in a worse off position than white Americans?
I think generation by generation, the effects of slavery have been diluted, but generation by generation, the effects of racism, welfare-based policies, and things of that nature became even more great. So in the 1880s or so, when we had our first black members of Congress, which were indeed Republicans, I think
in the 1880s, 20 years after slavery ended,
that was a great start for things, but obviously we had terrible things that happened, like the Tulsa massacre, among black people being chased out of their homes by the KKK.
Sure.
All funded by the Democrat Party, all supported by the Democrat Party.
Well, I need to stop you there. Can you attribute not to the party but to the ideology? Because I think when you think, regardless of whatever the party switch
howdy,
was,
LD.
traditionally conservative values did not that's more aligned with more racist policies.
Yeah, traditionally, the policies conservatives seek to conserve are the ones that have been in place, like slavery or enforced second-class citizenship.
Very
country,
difficult to compare 2020's conservatism to 1880s conservatism. Oh, I was loving the 1v4.
So personally, I feel like there's really only one thing that white people have a true advantage over black people with, and it's that white people are less likely to be forced into a box. It happens with black people onto other black people, but it especially happens with white liberals onto black conservatives, where we are told that we are supposed to think a certain way, be a certain way, and if we're not, then we're called all these names like etc. And the worst of all is bootlicker, because I hate when a white liberal tells me as a black man that I'm a bootlicker, because then I ask, whose boot am I licking? Because you're telling me as a white person that me as a black person that I'm licking your boot because I don't think in this box that you want me to frame my mentality in?
Where the term bootlicker isn't referring to you licking the boots of the person who's saying it to you. That's not how that phrase works. When you're being called a bootlicker, it means you're licking the boots of, like, you know, your boss at work. You know, the boots the boots are the hegemony that is oppressing people. Okay, you know, like when the jackbooted thugs come to like enforce law and order, those boots.
That to me is real racism, and that's what we need to stop allowing to happen to us, because black people are so quick now to not branch out and to have new ways of thinking, or to go into careers like agriculture and these other career paths that black people don't typically get into.
I wonder why black people don't typically get into agriculture. Historically speaking, I wonder if there might not be like socioeconomic and historical realities that either prevented black people from engaging in the agriculture industry, or, you know, stole their accomplishments in agriculture. I don't know. I just, you know, might be worth reading about the failures of Reconstruction or something. I don't know. Just an idea.
It's not because of racism stopping them from getting in there. It's because we're told for so long that you have to follow this.
Has this man never heard of sharecropping? The reason a lot of black people got out of the agriculture industry was because they were being basically turned into indentured servants via the mechanism of sharecropping. And they had, you know, their profits stolen by the people who owned the sharecropping business. Anyway, I'm getting angry. Thanks.
This path, and you have to think a certain way.
I think America is a great place for a black person. I think I'm an American. Anything that's available to you is available to me and mine.
I've personally never experienced white people having way more privileges than me. Like, I'm sure you could find certain institutions where black people are treated differently, but in general, I don't think that I've...
Okay, wait, that's really interesting phrasing. I'm sorry.
Anything that's available to you is available to me and mine.
I've personally never experienced white people having way more privileges than me. Like,
why are you phrasing it like that? Like you've come across situations where white people had some privileges over you, a little bit of privilege over you? Because then you need to look at that and say, if I'm encountering these situations, and that is then aggregated on a societal scale, well, then those little instances, or those some instances, can add up. But like, and yeah, we're not talking about personal, we're talking about societal. But like, the fact that she acknowledges she has encountered this, she just doesn't believe that it would, in the aggregate, affect things is very interesting to me.
I'm sure you could find certain institutions where black people are treated differently, but in general, I don't think that I've missed out on anything because of being black. And if anything, it's given me more of a voice because...
Oh yeah, no, Jubilee doesn't just pick random people off the street. They like to pretend that they do.
People will want
But like a lot of the people they have on their show are like, you know, influencers or like, you know, they have a lot of PragerU people on frequently. Like it's not they aren't taking like just anybody, you know.
to hear what I say now because I'm black. So if anything, I have more of a platform now just on the basis of being a black conservative and saying what's not popular than I would if I was just a white person who was also conservative.
I agree with the Supreme Court's decision to end affirmative action.
I think I'm not going to start. Someone else can start. Sorry.
I think affirmative action has served its purpose. I think that it was necessary for a particular time, and I think that every black person knows how to get into college. I mean, you can pull out the names, the Oprah, President Obama. You can pull out the head of Time Warner was black man, the Forbes was black man. We know what to do now. We don't need affirmative action anymore. And to me, affirmative action is offensive sometimes, especially nowadays, because I have 6 children and 2 boys, 4 girls. And all of them went to Harvard and Columbia and this one and that one. And it breaks my heart to think that they accomplished that goal of getting into these institutions just because of the color of their skin.
I can definitely say that it creates a lot of tension when you have affirmative action. I remember my first week in the
again, affirmative action isn't like, oh, you're not qualified, therefore you don't get in. Like, that's not how it works. Actually,
University of Illinois, I was sitting with some classmates.
They're not like, oh, let's send these underqualified people who just fill out our ranks. No, that's not how that worked.
And a white student turned to me and jokingly like, hey, Xavier, like, did you just attach a smiley face when you applied for this college? And I started asking what he meant, and he said to me that he was like, you're black, I'm assuming you had decent grades. You could have just attached a smiley face and you would have gotten into the university. So I was livid by that, and I went off. I started naming all of my accomplishments, and I felt so confident only for about an hour. Because then an hour later, I started saying to myself, like, wow, like, did I actually earn my way in here? I started to have this insecurity, and I started wondering to myself, did I earn this position myself, or did my ancestors' suffering earn this for me?
And too, I've seen it in the sense of like affirmative action taking away from other people who are minorities. Like I had a friend who was Asian and he in high school and he really wanted to go to MIT. That was his dream school. He interned there. He was super like prepared to go there and he didn't get in. And you can only assume that it was because of affirmative action because they have such a large Asian population that they want to admit other people.
Yeah, I was going to actually argue that it's more racist nowadays because it excludes so many Asian Americans from getting into universities who do deserve a spot and they can't get in because of affirmative action, which again, like you were saying, was necessary at the time. Yeah. But now it's like anybody, if you have the skills to do it and you're in America, you can get in.
I don't think affirmative action is the worst thing, considering all the different types or aspects of a background you might take into account when somebody's getting into college, whether they were in certain clubs, you know, Boy Scouts, what type of classes they took, that might not be available to everybody. I don't think that factoring in the affirmative action is necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like because of everything you guys have said, the optics behind it are so horrible today that even if it is slightly beneficial in the long run for certain people, I think we can probably refocus most of that into figuring out like the class that people come from, the neighborhoods, the backgrounds or whatever, without it having to necessarily target race. The only thing that I kind of wonder now that it's gone is instead of a black person being in school thinking like, man, am I here because I'm an affirmative action pick, is it going to be a kid that is poor or a kid that's from a different zip code?
I think we should do away with all of it. It's just like submit an application, no demographics. Why do they ask your sexuality? Like why do they ask all that stuff?
Babe. Like, oh man, dude. Oh man, dude. Dude. Part of the reason they ask it is so that they can know who's coming into the university, but also because historically there have been instances of discrimination against people, and the entire point for getting that information is to ensure that those people aren't discriminated against on the basis of their gender or sexuality or race. For example, if you just do race-blind admissions, you know what? One of the things that happens, and we know this because there's research on it, people with whiter-sounding names wind up getting placed in the university. There is a bias based on names. Like, that there are other clues throughout like the admissions process that will indicate race, and by formally having affirmative action programs, those programs are there and designed to make sure that the admissions process isn't actually only taking someone on the basis of their skin color or their sexuality or gender. The entire premise of affirmative action was developed to enforce the 1964, I think, if I remember correctly, Civil Rights Act. Like that's like the entire point. This is frustrating to me. But yeah, what is frustrating is it seems like these people thought they were coming here with like well-formed opinions, and I think the only person here who actually answered in a way that was like coherent was Destiny, because like yeah, the way affirmative action has been implemented in a lot of places in the United States was relatively ineffective. However, it was slightly better than nothing. So I think that his statement was kind of the closest to like the reality of it, but the other people here are just like, yeah, some guy like brought up this point, and now I agree with him. How is that an argument or an advocacy of your position? I don't understand. Alec Gunter, save this.
So, if affirmative action accomplished its purpose, why do we still see the disparities that we do in the professional workplace? If you average white wealth and compare it to black wealth totals, white people as a whole have about 50 times greater wealth than black people as a whole per capita. So I just don't understand why you think affirmative action has accomplished its purpose. I don't see that.
Curious, why do you assume that just because there is a disparity means it's because of a racial issue?
What else would it be from?
I mean,
upbringing, economic abilities,
desire to
skills.
go, desire to.
I mean,
So
zip
it
code
was their
does
fault.
play a
Yeah, it's again that you ask it when you ask conservatives this question. You guys remember when you ask them this question, right? Their response is usually going to be, "Oh, it's the culture. It's you know, black people just don't have the culture of economic success. Black people just don't have the culture of, you know, insert category of success. You know, it's because our culture renders us fatherless. It's because of, well, there are perverse economic incentives that encourage, you know, one-parent households. You know, it's that black people culturally are just worse with money, you know? And the response to that is that the socioeconomic and historical realities are what shape the culture, right? And if you take that into account, well, there's one major event or time period that indeed would have reinforced those differences. And those differences were reinforced by 400 years of being owned as chattel slavery. And also, decades upon decades after that, of being treated systematically like second-class citizens, and being denied things like equal voting rights, being denied things like the ability to like go to the hospital or go to decent schools. You know, like, we're living in the fallout of that. So yeah, the economic ability could really be, I don't know, rendered down a little bit more to, well, the reason a lot of black families don't have that economic ability is because they're born into poor families. Poorer families have less economic ability because they're poor. So like a lot of this just has this air of, I mean, it's kind of the trap for conservatives, right? Because if they say, oh well, it's genetic, well then they've shown their hand, right? But as long as they say it's cultural, they can play like this kind of like shifting cup game with you, right? Ad nauseum almost. But really, when you boil it down, the way to kind of counteract that is to point out, hey, the culture is shaped by these historical realities, which is why we need economic, social, and social reforms to kind of counteract those historical realities and bring more equality, bring more equitability, you know? So that's really what it boils down to at the end of the day. That's kind of how you need to take this argument, because I kind of love talking about it, because it's basically conservatives find themselves in a pretty difficult bind.
A lot. If you grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma, you're not as likely to do as well in school, which means you're...
Why did they grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma?
I mean, lots of people do.
Yes, but why specifically do more black people?
Government assistance programs.
Government assistance programs, like what?
Try redlining.
I mean, you can go into that if you'd like to, but let's take
It
a
is
look
relevant.
at the Great Societies Act, which was created to kick black fathers out of the home and get black mothers on welfare assistance. These things aren't beneficial for economics. These things aren't beneficial for actually paving a way for success for black.
Well, actually, when you look at the historical reality, the number one thing that takes black fathers out of the home is the war on drugs. That was specifically founded to target black Americans during the civil rights era.
Black children and black families. I mean, reducing a two-family household to a one-family household isn't going to make them the richest man in the world. It isn't even going to get them out of high school. Nonetheless, the ability to even get to college.
You mean
Yeah,
two-parent?
the child, yes, but a two-parent household.
Yeah. Part of what is frustrating about this, right, is his assertion is that because welfare programs exist, fathers just decide to, sleep around more and then leave the mother of their child. But like, that doesn't really make sense, like, at all. What the fuck are these people wearing? I don't know, clothes. I think it's fine. Destiny's wearing a Destiny shirt. We got 2 one-piece shirts. We got an anti-vax shirt, and the rest of them are just kind of normal shirts.
In comparison to a one-parent household, that child is not going to be nearly as successful. That child is more disposed to being sent into prison by doing crimes or not doing very well in school. So how are they even supposed to get that, that wealth disparity shrunk if they aren't even able to get out of the community that is causing these problems for them?
Something I think that this conversation illustrates is that like affirmative action is literally the very
Archangel, yes, that is the argument he's making. That's what I was trying to like lay out. So yeah. I thought it was that fathers were made to leave or pretend to leave so the mothers could collect the welfare, because otherwise they would get denied. Yeah, that is the argument he's making. That's just generally not what happened. Again, the main reason African American fathers are less likely to be present in the home right now is because of the war on drugs. Like, the argument he's making is just not a thing that has happened at a large scale, if at all, to my knowledge. Now, someone could present facts to that effect, but I haven't seen them, and I've spent time looking into these, so I don't know. But if someone has evidence to the contrary, feel free to put it out there.
Very end of the line.
And yes,
of a
this
lot
is
of
Destiny.
different parts of a person's life, and by that point, trying to rectify all of the inequities that have existed, to try to remedy any of that at the very end with affirmative action, it might just be too broad a brush, and maybe we'd be better served focusing on the earlier issues than trying to throw a kid who maybe can barely read at a 6th grade level into a college to hope that that's the thing that fixes the problem at the end of the line.
I think.
Yeah. Well, it all goes back to slavery. The black fathers were ripped from their families, and young black males were raised without fathers. Then the war on drugs compounded that issue. I mean, I don't necessarily know that if you look at the history of black families during Reconstruction, you found more black fathers just abandoning their families. I have, again, never come across any facts to that effect. Like, they were certainly treated like that during slavery, but I don't know that that was something that persisted after the abolition of slavery during kind of the Jim Crow era, you know? I think that actually it made way more economic sense to stick together, so it was probably a less common thing. But what is happening now is, like, again, we're still in harsh economic times where people are living paycheck to paycheck. Like, I don't think it is particularly common now for black fathers to just up and leave. It's far more common for them to be arrested and put in prison.
I think affirmative action wasn't really supposed to, like, send kids to Harvard that weren't prepared to go to Harvard. I think that's...
Yeah, absolutely. No, the conservative solution to this of just eliminate welfare programs isn't it. You know, like, the actual, if you want an actual solution, it's to universalize programs. Universalize the programs, and stop means testing for bullshit reasons. Most of the means testing we currently use is just to kick people off. And a lot of the people who get kicked off still need those programs, actually.
Quite a myth, in fact. I think those that have the qualities to get to Harvard were before...
Well, because, Archangel, the fatherlessness is, I would argue, mostly like a financial thing. Like, if you're living in a one-income house versus a two-income house, you know, you're gonna have a very different experience, right? But also, like, a bit of a social one. Like, having two parents helps a lot. You know, like, guys, kids are a lot of work. I know, hot take. Children take a lot of time and energy. And when you have two people who are able to contribute time and energy, well, that helps, like, the parents deal with that more. You know? Yeah, time. It takes time and energy and money. And if you have two people, you have more of both, more of all of those, you know? That's, you know. But also, you know, fatherlessness isn't really an issue in, like, for example, a two-mom household, right? Like, the main problem is economic and just, like, social. I'm coming into this as a child of a single mother is why I'm asking. Well, yeah, but you understand why I'm saying it, right? Like, it's just easier to raise a kid with two people. It's not impossible to do it with one person. It's just a little bit easier. You know, like, you can hand the baby who's been crying and pooping all day to your partner, and then you can go and take a shit by yourself without worrying that that baby is going to hit its soft spot and die. You know, like, basic things like that mean a lot when you're raising a kid. And now you can still get through it alone. I'm not saying you can't, just that more people help. And yeah, 3-parent households, you know, it takes a village, literally, you know?
Or affirmative action were just completely overlooked. You know, Clarence Thomas is, like, the perfect example. You know, regardless of what you think about him, he was able to get to Harvard because of affirmative action. Because, you know,
why is being fatherless this terrible developmental thing? Because of the economic and the energy stuff. That's why. Conservatives will say fatherlessness is a terrible thing because fathers have this intangible magic about them that without, without like a father, you won't get that magic passed on to you. But like that's just kind of bullshit, I'm just saying that the only valid parts of like hey, we need fathers in the home is you need two people in this economy, It helps a lot. I raised a child by myself, and yes, Jack, you're spot on. My son is 21 and lives at home still, but that's another conversation. Honestly, in this economy, it's not surprising, and good on you for opening a place for your kiddo.
It focused on finding people that were, again, like just overlooked for those.
But things ended up changing. It morphed into something else. So what started out as a good program of giving all black people or people with a lesser chance or lesser opportunity, it started out as that, and then it morphed and I'm not sure who morphed it, but it morphed into, okay, so now we have to have one black, one Hispanic, one this, one that.
That's not how that works.
But hey, talk to the corporations, talk to the people who hire, talk to the board members who say we need to have a woman.
I have talked to those people. That's not how it works. Yo.
Very true stream title. Also, such a lovely chest patterned collared shirt.
Thank you so much, Kairyu. Thank you for being the first person since Irked to subscribe to stream. I appreciate it. Let your subs be an example to us all. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate the dickens out of you.
On a board, we need
I
to
am
have a
ready
black
for
on
fall.
the board. We need to do now. We don't need a.
I'm literally inhaling this balsam cedar candle. I'm ready, baby.
Affirmative action anymore. And to me, affirmative action is offensive.
Oh wait, did I accidentally go back? I think I did.
I mean, lots of people do.
Yes.
Thomas is like the perfect example, regardless.
The board, we need to have a black on the board. We need to have a Latina, a Latinx, whatever on the board. So it morphed from helping us into now
Tokenization.
Yes. So you have to have one of this, one of that.
Well, when you start with a country where people only hire you if you're white, that's necessary. And I know that you said that it started.
Alec Gunter, absolutely, right? Like, oh man, I wonder if he's gonna do it. I wonder if he's gonna drop an MLK Jr. quote. One of the ones that conservatives don't know. A society that has done something to oppress the black community must now do something special to support the black community. I'm paraphrasing pretty terribly, but yeah, like. That's MLK Jr. right there, talking about affirmative action. Alec Gunter is great. He's been in chat before, and honestly, during the outreach arc, we need to talk to Alec.
Good, and then ended whatever. And I don't think that affirmative action was perfect by any measure, but we still see really, really bad inequality. So if you're going to get rid of affirmative action, what's the replacement?
Meritocracy.
Is people need to.
There's
yes, the replacement is meritocracy. Okay, but how though? Okay, how though? Well, just whoever does better will get hired. But how do you know if they did better or not? I'm sorry. Have you seen all the fail son hedge managers? Have you seen them? Like people who are born to extraordinarily wealthy dads who then get put on boards of, I don't know, international oil companies because of their last name and connection with power and money. Conservatives talk about Hunter Biden all the goddamn time, and then they have the nerve to talk about how, we'll just fix everything with meritocracy. How? You just took away the guardrails that would prevent things like the blatantly unmeritocratic appointment of people like Hunter Biden to positions of power. Like, congrats. You're saying we're just gonna undo it with meritocracy. Well, congratulations. We don't have that. We never have.
There's no meritocracy in this country. You look at Elon Musk, he's destroying Twitter. There's no meritocracy. That's ridiculous.
Well, first thing I want to bounce back to is it's not a myth that there are like minorities that are being put into colleges that they're not ready for. If you look at a lot of these top universities, including Harvard, Yale, etc., you're going to see a lot of minorities on academic probation because they are being placed in universities that they are not ready for. They are not cut out for that just yet. And it even just makes sense if you look at how much they have to achieve in order to get there. Asian students on average have to score 450 points higher than a black student in order to get in the same university. So if you think of the universities that have courses, et cetera, that grade on a curve, you can only have so many people with an A, so many people with a B, et cetera.
So, one thing that needs to be talked about here. Good night, Ashley. Get good sleep. And, yeah, you take it easy, okay? Much love. And thank you for helping to invent the internet. And many other things. But, guys, like, when we talk about, oh, well, standardized testing shows... Do you think maybe, I'm just gonna spitball here, that the people who make the tests that are used for standardized testing might not have either intentional or unintentional biases that come out in the questions they ask in the test? Right? Have you ever thought about that? Because that's actually what we find in a lot of standardized testing. We find when you look at the standardized testing questions, guess what? If you phrase a math problem, you know, for kids in like elementary school, right? And the standardized testing is developed, say, by affluent white folks, you know, generally. And they ask what to them would be a very standard question about, you know, calculating a yacht's travel speed and when it will arrive when, or, you know, something about skiing. Do you think that that might not resonate or be as well received by children growing up in environments where they've never seen a yacht, they've never been on a yacht, they've never been sailing, they've never been skiing? So, this is actually a problem that we see throughout all standardized testing, not just on things like the SAT, right? But these things, when, you know, scattered throughout our schooling histories, right, can lead to certain groups of students developing test-taking skills while other groups of students don't develop those test-taking skills because they learn early on that the questions aren't even really designed for them. They're designed for people who know about skiing. They're designed for people who know about, you know, having a place to winter, or, you know, how to sail a yacht, you know. So actually, it's okay to just do bad on tests. You know, like, the testing winds up being a way to filter students and to send messages to students. And over time, that then leads them to the SAT and the ACT. And those two tests then are kind of like the end state of the sorting process for these students. And a lot of the people who didn't like resonate with the earlier tests, they're not going to do so well. And so at the end of the day, these tests are a long filtration system. And then you have to deal with the biases of each individual test. And the SAT and the ACT are both designed to have a certain amount of people passing and a certain amount of people failing. And, well, when you look at it, kind of seems like there are biases involved. Biases that maybe a well-done affirmative action program would help to counteract.
So that means that the bottom percentile is going to fail. Who is most likely, just based on logic, going to be the ones failing? It's going to be the people who didn't have the credentials to get there in the first place. And then I have to bounce back to.
I want to get you on that point, because I would posit that the people who are least likely to have good outcomes in an academic setting are those who have to work 2 jobs, are those who have to drive there from home because they can't afford a dorm, are those who have to go into crippling financial debt. These are and have other stresses in their life. They can't afford a doctor, they can't afford a dentist, they can't afford anything.
I had to do
So
that too, though.
those are the
That's
people.
not just black people. It's not just.
But it's
If we're looking at
overwhelmingly.
straight numbers, there are more white people in poverty than black people.
If you look at the raw numbers, but if you
I don't know,
actually
what are the
understand
wrong
what you're talking
numbers?
about.
No.
If you look at, yeah, by the raw numbers, but black people have a much, much higher rate of poverty compared to white people. It's just that there are, most of the country is white in America. But you need to look at the percentage of the population. Okay.
The issue is poverty in general, though. I don't think it's like who's in poverty. It's like poverty sucks.
Maybe we should make college free, and maybe we want to have affirmative action wouldn't be that necessary.
It'll get even more ghetto.
If you have a program that says if you are under a certain income level, this is how we'll help you, that will overwhelmingly help black people at a far greater percentage than it will help white people.
Trump supports Black lives.
Yo. Dude.
I think that President Trump supports all lives. I think that he looks at all American citizens as equal. I don't see him doing anything that would make you feel like he does not support Black lives. That's, of course, going to lead into the conversation of Black Lives Matter, which was a movement and an organization with so much corruption. Donald Trump not supporting that organization doesn't mean that he doesn't support Black lives. It just means that he doesn't support the fraudulent organization that's stealing so much money from so many people to do absolutely nothing with it, nor does he support a destructive...
Well, that wasn't the question. It was the question wasn't does Trump support Black Lives Matter?
Movement that is destroying cities, communities, lives.
How is he a plant? He's on here as a black conservative. All of the black people on this episode are conservatives,
etc. So I don't see why someone would think that President Trump doesn't support Black lives.
I've heard him say he knows all the best black people. He has all the best black friends. I do support black people all the time. So sorry, that was a very bad impression. But I don't think Donald Trump wants bad things to happen to black people. So in that respect, I think he does support Black lives. But the other side of that is he's not really doing anything. He didn't do anything as president, certainly, to uplift black people.
The economy affects black people.
Yeah, I certainly disagree with that point. One of the biggest things I
What does he do for the
supported
economy?
personally. Well, yeah, we'll get into that one later. One of the biggest things he did is he secured permanent funding for HBCUs, one of the largest increases we ever saw for HBCUs, personally done by his administration, among many other things. The First Step Act, which, there's a lot of debate about whether it was really the best thing to do, but that was definitely a kiss of love to the black race. Freeing Alice Johnson for menial drug crimes she committed in the past that had her locked up. She did not get to see her family for years.
Yeah, but that's not okay, I did say I agree, but I agree in the sense that Donald Trump doesn't literally want bad things to happen to black people, like I think a lot of conservatives do. So I think that he just says the most.
You giving that look? Who do you think in the South is waving Confederate flags, bruh? You think the liberals down there are waving Confederate flags? Nah. but also I actually disagree with Alec Gunther here. I think that Trump does wish ill on black people. I don't think like it's his driving thought. You know, I don't think he like wakes up and he's like, "Gah, those black people out there," like the Grinch looking down on Whoville. I don't think that's him, right? Instead, I think Donald Trump just has a general contempt for black people when he thinks of them at all. You know, like dude literally had informal rules not to hire any black people at his casinos, okay? His buildings weren't made to be rented to black people or Jewish people. Like, I think dude who took out full page ad in the New York Times to try and get 5 young black kids hung, I think he generally doesn't wish well for black people.
Yeah, I do think that. I think he says the things that will get him elected. So I don't think that he has any personal grudges against most people. He just says the most popular thing. So I think like Ron DeSantis would be somebody that I think actually wants black people to be hurt. So by that standard, yeah, Donald Trump supports Black lives by leaps and bounds.
You think Donald Trump says the most popular thing?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Then why do so many people hate him?
He says the most popular thing to you, to his base. That's who he cares about. The people who hate him aren't his base.
He got elected as president.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He didn't win the popular vote neither time.
That's a liberal
That's what your
talking
side
point.
likes to say.
That's a liberal talking
I'm
point.
helping you.
Yeah, it's still though, a lot of people voted for him, didn't they?
You here? I'm trying to see the logic in this. Obviously, he says things to be elected as a politician very similarly to how Joe Biden did, except Joe Biden actually has a history of racism.
If he said things that people didn't like, he wouldn't have been our president.
So you like everything that Donald Trump says? You think everything he says is popular?
Yeah, with you guys, the people who voted for him, yeah.
I love a lot of the things he says. I think he's hilarious. When he said big water, that was one of my favorite quotes. Big water.
Water, big water, ocean water.
He has the funniest one-liners, so I love a lot of the things he says. As far as policy, he sucks, but...
I'm just shocked you're wearing a Hunter Biden hat. He likes a different kind of one line.
Oh, I know, conservatives love talking about his...
No, Coke. It's different. Coke, not...
Oh, no, they're not just talking about his coke. They aren't talking about Hunter Biden's big throbbing line of coke. Okay?
Trump is less of the issue and more so the people that support him, like Die Hard. They facilitate that kind of like hate, I think, for a lot of people, not just black people, but like...
I mean, this man took out like a full page in a newspaper calling for the public execution of 5 black kids. His hotels, all of his businesses have rampant history of denying black people apartments or whatever. So
I forgot about that. I should not have stepped forward.
Look, I mean, Donald Trump cares about Donald Trump.
Okay, all right. We absolve Alec of the of the Jubilee sin.
Trump, so I don't think he really cares about anyone, I guess, unless you're like super rich or whatever.
When you look at his history on racial issues, whether it's the shithole countries comment, the plethora of comments he made about Mexican people, just the comments he's made about Muslims, the idea that Trump cares at all about some particular racial minority, I think is a little bit silly. I think Trump will say whatever he needs to say to rile up his base and to get elected.
I don't necessarily think those statements come from a place of hatred. I don't think he was ever saying...
But that's the question isn't about Donald Trump hates black lives. That wasn't the question. The question was or I guess the statement, Trump supports black lives. It's not Trump hates black lives. It's Trump supports him. So supports them. Like, clearly he doesn't support black lives.
Specifically, oh, if you pray 5 times a day...
Are there any socialists in here? I believe Alec Gunther might be. I'm not sure about Alec's like specific politics.
towards the east or towards Mega based on wherever you are, you're a bad person. I think he was saying if you like to fly planes into towers or behead people or throw people off of buildings, maybe you're not the most virtuous person out there.
I supported Trump because he made the economy good, and so the economy then impacted black people, white people, Latino people. It impacted everybody. But Trump, he didn't think specifically, I don't think, about black people. He thought about himself, and he thought about how can I make America great for me, and making and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go with this guy, and the reason I'm gonna go with this guy is because if he can make America great and he can make that it rise for everybody, I'm gonna benefit from it.
Well, white hoodie guy is also 18 years old, so maybe, you know, like, yeah, he can vote, but his brain isn't even solid yet. Okay.
So that's why I went, and that's why I voted for him. That's why I supported him.
But how does that specifically benefit black people? Again, he's a businessman, but he's also a racist businessman, and like well documented so. So like
and Biden's not. Biden's not.
Yes, he is. He created the crime bill. So that's regardless of the point.
Address the Central Park 5. That's what you brought up, right? How do you feel about that?
Well,
he took that full
actually,
page out after they were exonerated.
so I haven't.
He wanted them to be killed, executed, just because they were black.
That story.
And he bars people from attending his businesses or like renting apartments from all his like stupid Trump towers. I think
Trump at that point was, like many people in this room, particularly liberals, a victim of the media. I think he was scared. I think he was ashamed of the things that he heard.
You think that Donald Trump, a guy with 24/7 security since the day he was born, is scared of a gang of black people just going to like assault him or something? Like what?
Heard in the news and wanted to take action himself as a businessman, not as a racist.
Why are you infantilizing him?
I don't like, also real quick, because people keep bringing up this comparison to the '93 crime bill from Biden. That crime bill, this was at the height of like violent crime and the crack epidemic in the United States. The Congressional Black Caucus supported that crime bill. Everybody in the United States supported that crime bill. The idea that that crime bill was like some racist piece of legislation that Biden was just wheeling out because he hated.
I mean, it was a racist piece of legislation, but like, it was racist in like the same way the Patriot Act is hella racist, but like when it was passed, almost everybody agreed, yeah, we need to pass the Patriot Act. You know, like that sort of thing. At the time, people were pretty in favor of it, regardless of where they were on the political spectrum.
Hates black people, and that's somehow comparable to the Donald Trump's treatment of the Central Park 5 that were already exonerated. That wasn't a victim of the media. The media said they were done. They were exonerated in court. They weren't there.
As I understand it, the prosecutor of the 5, he was a black guy, and so in being a black guy, he went and he looked at all the evidence and said these guys are guilty.
Black people can also be racist against other black people.
Or just make mistakes.
So if anybody does anything you disagree with in regards to the Central Park 5, even if they themselves are a black person, they're just a self-loathing black person, they're just a racist black person.
If they disagree with me, they're racist.
That prosecutor was doing his job.
That's my policy. If they disagree with me, they're racist.
I like.
Man, I don't know how this statement is gonna play to the general audience of Jubilee, but it is very funny to me, knowing that he is indeed joking, but also kind of not.
I think Trump has shown a history of ignorant at best and racist at worst behavior. I didn't vote for him or Hillary because I just don't see him as a conservative hero. I don't even think he's a conservative.
Fake conservative. I voted Trump in 2016, just so you all know. So I'm just saying.
So I need to.
Yeah, I think Alec has gone full troll mode here.
I need you to elaborate on if people disagree with you, they're racist, just in general.
I was just kidding.
He's just, yeah.
You never know.
Just like
One
the
of those
hat.
kind of moments.
Sorry if I triggered you. I'm sorry.
You made a point. You made a point
Okay.
a couple of minutes back where you said he just kind of says these things to rile up his base. Why does he need to do that at the expense of black people then?
He doesn't do that at the. I am a member of his base, and I'm sitting there like, oh man, this is amazing, and I don't.
Yeah. But do you not, like, does that not cause any, like, dissonance where, like, you could just be, like, a guy walking in a park with his friends and then have, like, the president call for your execution even though you've been exonerated in a court of law? Like, is there no dissonance there?
I don't know. You can call me
So
self-loathing. You can call me
so
self-hating.
you're
you can call me
saying calling
racist.
for the
I'd call you
public
stupid.
execution of 5 black men that were exonerated to
When
rile
has he
up
done
his
that during the
base.
campaign trail? He didn't do that when he was a politician.
Well,
he did that when he
again,
was a
it's
scared businessman
everything.
in New York.
It's
feeling
everything
bad.
Steve said about the comments about Muslims, the comments about Mexican immigrants. Why does he
never
need-
about Mexican immigrants, never about Muslims, about terrorists and about criminals and rapists.
I-
These are very important delineations to make. And if you believe
I
that
think
what
you
are fed the media
understand,
about,
or
oh, it's all
I think
Mexican.
Yeah, no. By the way, just of course. Oh, hey.
They've been, Mr. President, will you apologize to the Central Park Five? They've been exonerated. There have been videos, movies shown about the case, and you came out with a full-page ad saying that they should die, that they should have the death penalty.
Why do you bring that question up now? It's an interesting time to bring it up. You have people on both sides of that. They admitted their guilt. If you look at Linda Fairstein and if you look at some of the prosecutors, they think that the city should never have settled that case. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, so no, while he was president, he essentially still was like, nah, I still think they should have been executed, though. Yeah.
Immigrants, I think it's more of you being, oh man, these poor Mexicans, they need to be supported. It's more of that savior complex. Wow,
What was
we're
the
back
rationale
again.
behind axing or trying to axe DACA? Were these people were registered with the federal government? They were in school. They were doing everything.
Oh, none of the prosecutors for the Central Park Five were black? No idea what that guy was talking about? Gotcha.
They needed to do. They had no home elsewhere. They were brought into this country as miners. Like, what's the explanation for
I
that?
think that requires more nuance. Like I mentioned before, I think there were some
paid for their
people.
education.
I think
Why
there
would
were
you
some
wanna kick
people
them out?
feeding him bad policy advice, thinking, "Oh, this will be really good for your base," and he's doing a lot as a president.
That's okay. That's okay if we feel that way. But
So,
at the end of the
if I take responsibility for something, if I say he has responsibility for something, well then you're right. But if I'm saying, well, maybe there are some people around him advising him falsely,
Dude,
it's infantilizing.
He was the president.
There's no good way.
He
to
called the shots. What are you talking about?
The only path forward to solving illegal immigration starts with amnesty.
I
for
have
everybody
not,
here.
Natalie Lush.
The reality is there's some 10 to 15 million illegal immigrants here. We're not deporting them all.
With the people who are already here, that's a lot more of a messy, nuanced conversation. But as far as people coming in, I do think we need stronger borders and actual vetting happening.
Why? Why? Statistically, immigrants are, even undocumented immigrants, are far less likely to commit crimes than native-born Americans. If anything, let more of them in. They do fewer crimes.
And I just want to say, in Ronald Reagan's day, he was given the promise. He said, look, if you go ahead and you pass this particular bill, we'll give these people amnesty and we're done. And it didn't happen. We didn't. Illegal immigration continued even after Reagan already said we will give these people amnesty. So that
I don't understand. I don't understand the concept here of well, we really just need to kick more people out of the country. We need to kick more people out of the country. We need to kick more people out of the country. We have tried that time and time again, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Have any of you heard of Operation Wetback? Any of you? We deported so many people in the 1950s. They literally called it that. Yes. The term was derived from undocumented immigrants swimming across the Rio Grande. Yeah. So they just called it Operation Wetback. Yes, it is incredibly racist. They tried to deport hundreds of thousands of people, and guess what? It didn't fix the problem. It didn't work. Yeah, Operation Wetback was the culmination of more than a decade of intensifying immigration enforcement. Immigration enforcement actions, removals, and returns rose rapidly from a low of 12,000 in 1942 to 727,000 in 1952, the final year of the Truman administration. Enforcement actions continued to rise under Eisenhower until reaching a peak of 1.1 million in 1954, the year of Operation Wetback. Enforcement actions then fell by more than 90% in 1955 and 1956 and 1957. This isn't worth it. Like, so much money spent trying to keep people out when you could just allow them in and have more labor. Potentially a problematic view. I want them to ship immigrants from southern states to Seattle so I can get more South American brothers and sisters. Fair. Fair. Also improve some of the cuisine in the Seattle area. More labor, more taxpayers, better infrastructure. Treat them as full citizens. You get less crime that way. Leaves them less vulnerable to, you know, being taken advantage of by criminal cartels. There aren't a lot of downsides to actually just allowing immigrants to come here. There aren't actually that many downsides. And honestly, as far as I know, there are no downsides, actually.
That's why we get a burr up our butt, because he had already done it.
Hopefully the devil's giving him amnesty.
True.
That's terrible.
No, that's base. Thank you.
Tasteless.
Wow.
Ninth circle, baby.
My political beliefs have changed from the past.
I grew up in a conservative household, actually, in Ohio. And my parents were always pretty political, so I always stayed political. I was very religious as a teenager. Sometime during college and then afterwards, especially during COVID, my sister actually indoctrinated me into a more leftist position. And I overcorrected a little bit. I started becoming pretty cringy as far as, like, sit down and let the minorities all talk, right? Don't say anything, don't speak over them, etc. They would, it was like the whole you can't speak over Candace Owens even if she's literally a Nazi kind of thing. So I stand by that. So yeah, I kind of leveled out, thankfully, and I'm less cringe now.
Did you? Are you?
I cringed.
Yeah. This is leveled out. Imagine if we would have been here a year ago.
I mean, maybe I am being cringe. Who cares?
So I grew up conservative, but I did have more left-leaning ideas about, like, Black Lives Matter.
Candace Owens is a Nazi, though. Like her rhetoric is indistinguishable from a Nazi propagandist in, like, the 1930s.
Matter and critical race theory, and I was watching a lot of YouTube, and I did agree that Black people were oppressed and all of these different things, and that we were kind of got the short end of the stick. And during 2020, when there was everything crazy was happening, and I started organizing rallies against the mandates because I thought that they were just totally unconstitutional and un-American. And then George Floyd dies, and initially I was, like, enraged like everybody else. And
I'm sorry, is she saying she became conservative because of Black Lives Matter?
And then it started to become this weird, like, political, like, agenda masquerading behind his face. Like, the face of what was actually happening started to peel off, and I was like, oh. I mean, I would counter-protest BLM activists at my town square when I lived in Texas, and they were some of
Yeah, there's nothing like political about a police officer, using his power to murder someone. I guess. Yeah, COVID really did a doozy on us. I agree.
Some of the most just bitter, vile, horrible people you could ever meet. Meanwhile, like the Confederate group that would protest there against them also, they were like the nicest people ever to me, ironically.
I grew up in a Democratic.
Okay. No, literally her argument here is, I went to a Trump rally and people were nice to me, so I became conservative. Gotcha. It's the Carolyn Poroshenko syndrome.
Not a Democratic household, but kind of apolitical, but everybody was Democrat. And then I got a job. And when I got a job and I saw all the taxes come out and I started looking to the left and to the right and going, oh, my money's whittling away over here. And I said, you know what? After Reagan, I'm just going to go ahead and declare myself a Republican, and I've been a Republican ever since.
My mom is pretty liberal. She married my stepdad when I was like 15, 16 in high school, and he's super conservative, like loved Trump, diehard Trump fan. And they had a lot of like back and forth, hearing the two sides, like people who are on such polar opposites just like argue all the time about stuff, seeing that.
By the way, I'm sorry, like, what job did you get like under Reagan that was just so good that you were looking at the amount you were being taxed and being like, yeah, I need to be conservative so that I can do more things with this money? Like, I'm sorry, like I don't make that much money, but like the amount I'm taxed is not breaking my bank. You know, I make like $38,000, $40,000 something dollars a year. Like it's I don't know, like you probably were just fine being taxed. You just wanted a little bit extra for like spending money, I guess. I don't know.
That there's a lot of similarities in both sides. Like,
you pay so much tax, but you also could go to the hospital for free, which is pretty nice.
The far radical left and the far radical right, they have a lot of similarities. They just don't want to come and like see it.
I started off.
And honestly, if we had Medicare for all, I would have more money because I would be not having to pay like $600 a month for health insurance.
Actually, kind of similar to you. I went to a Jesuit high school. I grew up very conservative. My mom is Cuban, so ride or die Bush supporter, who is now a ride or die Trump supporter. I think the point of my life when I was the most like libertarian was probably the lowest point of my life financially. And I think it's because something that conservatives do really well is they make you feel like you can always like succeed as long as you work hard enough. And that's something that progressives and liberals suck at, that you're a victim of systemic racism, you're black so you're going to be discriminated against, you're a woman so nobody's going to care about your feelings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas Republicans will tell you, listen, if you work hard, you can do whatever you want, like just as long as you're willing to put in the work. And I felt that way up to the moment where I was losing my house, where I had an ex-girlfriend that was pregnant, where I had been fired from my previous job. There was a whole bunch of horrible stuff going on in my life, and I very, very luckily got into online content creation. And from there, as I started to make more money, I started to pay more taxes. When I get older and I look at taxes that come out of my paycheck, I mean, I care a little bit, but it was just so funny to me that back when I was making $15,000, $20,000 a year, I'm like, I gotta vote for the lower tax bracket, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm barely paying any taxes anyways. And you know, now that I'm older, like if the government wants to take, you know, a few, you know, 10, 20, whatever, how many more $1,000 out.
You just said you worked hard.
I did, but I got very, very, very lucky doing so. Very lucky.
Do you think it's just luck?
It's not just luck, but the difference is that born into a wealthier family, you can make so many more mistakes in life. And when you're born poor, you get like one or two before your life is over. And that's really sad to me.
Yeah, so I used to be a liberal. I voted for Bernie Sanders. And
Destiny is doing pretty good. You know, like I don't like Destiny, but he's doing well in this panel.
2016, as much as I regret that now. My family was pretty left-wing. Some of the people in my family were like radically left, like would refer to white people as blue-eyed, red-headed devils, things of that nature. And as I got older, I actually started being really outspoken for BLM. I was supposed to be on a reality show teaching people how to be a BLM activist.
You 3 years ago, you weren't conservative. You were very pro BLM. What reality show were you going to be on that teaches activism? Is it like this? Is it like the show Is It Cake, but with like activists? Like what is it? I want more details, actually.
at the time, I did a deep dive on BLM, and I started to realize all of these lies. So then I took a step back. I'm like, okay, what else am I being lied to about? And I started looking at the Democratic Party and questioning my own loyalty to being on the left.
I personally think both sides tend to be racist in different ways. I don't think the government is on the side of the people.
This is true. Liberals and conservatives do tend to be racist. And you know what? Even people like myself. Internalized racism. Gotta work on it. I also got internalized transphobia, internalized homophobia. We all got it. It's like we live in a society or something.
People in general, and that's just me being, a radical.
When I was young, I used to jump for joy and say, oh yeah, Obama, black president, that's so amazing. He's the same color as me. But when I started to do more research, one of the biggest things I was confused about is, well, why is he a Democrat? What is a Democrat? I did more research about the Democrat Party, and sure, you guys are gonna pop off about the head saying, oh, there's a party switch in the Southern strategy and all these things.
Which is true.
Which you may say is true. I don't believe
You may say it's true, but I don't believe it. Well, okay, that's too bad, but it's true though.
it is true at all.
You're
I
wrong.
understand, you may think I'm wrong.
You are.
However, one of the biggest questions I had was, why is Obama in the same party as the people that started the KKK, the same people that voted against the Civil Rights Act, the same people that are on the news talking about how black people aren't able to accomplish anything and need to be on welfare and need to be promoted with affirmative action and things of that nature.
I also
Yeah, that kid read like an essay by Thomas Sowell and like is treating it as his new Bible, okay?
in terms of, I guess, of my political journey, I was raised conservative, actually, and then high school became, I guess, sort of apolitical, and then throughout college, and I guess just throughout my life since then, I think I guess you can call me a progressive, you can call me, socialist, whatever you, but I guess that's, in the area of where I fall. You said that you were a Bernie fan in 2016, and then you transitioned to being, I guess, more conservative. I guess, I don't know, to me, Bernie Sanders, from what he said to what you think now, what was the shift?
For me, it was socialism, because back then I was a very broke college kid, and I just had this mentality that everything should be free, and I was feeling a bit entitled, like everything should be handed to me because I was black, because I was very much in that mentality. As I learned more about free markets, as I learned more about capitalism, I started to appreciate that much more. I started to appreciate small business much more, limited government, low regulations. I just started to like that.
What? Dude, what?
Much more, but I would say just more when it comes to economics. I don't agree with him.
Reparations are necessary.
When we talk about reparations, I think that doing reparations in the way that a lot of people think of it, where we just give it to black people, I'm not an expert on this, but I think it would be more income-based, and that in itself, like I said earlier, would disproportionately benefit black people, because if you recognize that they are disproportionately affected by a systemic injustice, then doing it on like a class level would uplift proportionally more black people than white people or any other race.
Yeah, I think like mostly like black GIs that were left out of like the New Deal, for instance, that to be able to come back and as a white American, as a white veteran, to get a home loan and then build that generational wealth, you could not get that as a black American. So there needs to be, I think, reparations. I don't care really what form it comes from. I think free healthcare, free college, so that everyone has like an equal opportunity to educate themselves, to build a better life for themselves.
I mean, frankly, like universal programs, yes, but also there's definitely a place for like tactical investment to alleviate economic inequality amongst like black communities and white communities. I think that is necessary for a reparation type program. Not just universal, but like there are areas that really got screwed by redlining. So invest in those areas. Look at the maps where the redlining was occurring. You can sometimes literally see on maps where the redlining happened. Like from like a bird's eye view, you can see it. Invest in those areas. You know, put money into the parks, put money into those schools. Because you know what? Sometimes those high schools in areas that are pulling from redlined areas or predominantly black areas, sometimes those schools have like literacy rates of like 15%. Like, it's ridiculous. And the solution to that is more funding for those schools, more funding for those social services, more funding for their like ability to exist outside of the school as well. Like in the parks, in the community centers, in the businesses even.
So it's sort of like, and I think Germany is also a perfect model to follow, you know, by issuing, first of all, a formal apology, which we haven't even done that, but also just like donating to like different funds, and you know, just I think a more equitable society striving for that is reparations in and of itself.
I have no problems with reparations if they had happened initially during the like slavery or the civil rights movement or any of that. But to try and do that now logistically just doesn't really make any sense. And like, where would this money?
Why would it make more sense logistically then and less sense logistically now? Why? What?
Come from? Like, we're in so much debt as a nation. Would I get this money? I'm biracial or triracial. Like, do mixed people get it? And like, do Irish people get reparations when they were indentured servants?
I think for reparations, if you can find specific instances of somebody being like actually deprived of something, whether specific instances of like the 40 acres and a meal promise, or whether you can find specific cases of like Chinese people building railroads or Irish people or whatever, people being deprived of things, that's okay. But otherwise, yeah, it's a logistical nightmare. There's no possible way that we'd be able to do it well.
Yeah, America's unique because we have bent over backwards for decades now, putting minorities in a position of privilege. I feel like we have done so much to give back to the communities that were obviously wronged. And I agree with both of you. Like, had this happened a long time ago.
Why are all of the mic levels of these participants so different? Jesus, do some equalization, Jubilee. You got money.
I would understand it. If we had specific incidences that we could trace where people were just completely screwed over, I would respect it. But right now, I don't deserve a payment for something my great-great-great-great-grandparents went through, and I don't think that white people are responsible for paying that to me either.
I know we don't want to use the word virtue signaling, but it's sort of like a bribe for a vote in a way, at least in my opinion. In states like California, where they've been throwing around the idea of, oh, we want to pay out this much money to every black citizen in there, in this state, it's like...
You know that the government is supposed to do things for you, right? You know, when the government gives people tax breaks, it's kind of like they're buying votes, isn't it? Come on, man.
Oh, are you serious? Because this is kind of like a joke, in my opinion.
I think that if we impose reparations now, I think it would rip America apart. I think that we're already separated enough as it is, and now you're going to have people walking around going, "You owe me money. You owe me money. I'm not paying you any money." It would just really rip us apart.
Giving somebody money doesn't mean anything if they don't know what to do with the money or how to handle the money. So if the primary issue,
well, again, there are different ways to do reparations.
Issue in black culture or with black people is generational trauma, then maybe they need more therapy than they need money, honestly.
And where are they going to get that therapy? Is that therapy going to be handed out for free? You can go to the free therapy store? No, it costs money.
Which conservatives are also against.
Well, that's kind of my argument. Like, if there is like that, like generational trauma or whatever, like I think examples of like free healthcare.
No, again, they made very clear. They made it clear very, very early on that, like, again, the conservatives on this panel made it clear that, you know, the reason black people underachieve is because of black culture. They made that argument already. It's not like, oh, it finally comes out. No, they did it already at the very beginning.
They could see a therapist and not be, you know, fall into debt. And I think the argument of like the logistical nightmares of it, I think if we want to pay for something in this country, we usually find a way to do it, especially when it comes to the military. So, I mean, we pay for multi-billion-dollar
It's
jets
not
all
the
the
dollars,
time.
it's who's supposed to get them.
Not to attack progressives, but that is like the most progressive idea in the world. Is like I can see the headlines like reparations voted on in Congress to be paid in the form of free therapy for people in the hood. That just sounds like the funniest thing in the world. But
Well, I also don't think it's gonna come directly from like, you know, white person to black person. Like, oh, your lineage affected his lineage.
It is though. Like in San Francisco, they were going to raise the average family, or the average household in San Francisco was expected to pay $600,000 each with the $5 million per black person proposal that they had. And I used to live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was repulsed by that because you have so many homeless veterans on the streets, and they were going to give black people a home for as little as $1 just for being black. Mind you, slavery wasn't even in California. So why that was going to be the case, like I don't understand, but it's extremely unrealistic to think that the average family in San Francisco can afford that.
That's because just as an FYI, what he's talking about is this news story. San Francisco proposes reparations includes $5 million for eligible black people. Again, this was a draft proposal, right? That was presented during a meeting of San Francisco's Board of Supervisors that had a presentation put on by San Francisco's African American Reparations Advisory Committee. And yeah, that's what it was. The $5 million per person payment is among more than
Donation,
100
no
recommendations. Damn, Kairyu, thank you for the 3 gifted tier 1 subs. And for being primarily one of the only people to support stream today. I very, very, very much appreciate it. Thank you. The rest of chat is slacking, though. I will die without delicious, delicious subs. Yeah. So, the $5 million per person payment is among more than 100 recommendations, ranging from offering grants to buy and maintain homes to exempting black businesses from paying taxes. Again, these aren't realistic proposals for the most part. Like, the reason this made headlines earlier this year was not because San Francisco adopted these policies or even came close to adopting these policies. There was just a presentation made to a bureaucratic board floating the idea of financial reparations. So that's where we're at on that one. It's not actually happening. And it's certainly not like a mainstream policy position among liberals.
Newsom wants to get reelected.
Okay, but you don't really care
Precisely.
about homeless veterans, right?
That's just
you
a
don't
laughable
support
idea.
You don't know
I feel
me.
like all your arguments are
But-
ad
but you-
hominem.
but you're here as a
Literally every
conservative.
single one
But
ad
you're here as a
hominem.
conservative. So what policies do you support for homeless veterans?
There's ways to address, I mean,
Specifically.
for homeless in general,
That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say that we didn't find a middle ground in there.
Yeah.
All right.
But that's a great ending note.
White liberals have a savior complex.
Well, I gotta say, this is a shock. I never expected all 4 of you to just come forward and admit it, but you know what? I'm happy with these results.
I just think it's a lot of people, I guess, people, you know, of the left, whatever, can kind of fall into that trap of thinking that, you know, black people as a monolith need to be saved as a whole.
I have no shame about it. I have a savior complex as an older brother, and I will save you whether you like it or not. So that's just me.
well, it's definitely not, because a lot of us are really just exhausted of being viewed as our skin color. Because when you have
What was the question? Do white liberals have a savior complex?
this mindset that you need to save black people and we're just sitting here minding our own business and living our lives the way we want to, I don't know why it is that people feel this immense pressure to be so apologetic and just always trying to cater and coddle to black people when we just want to be treated like everybody else. We're equal for a reason.
I think especially recently with a lot of riot stuff that's gone on or protest stuff that's gone on, people on the left tend to infantilize a lot of different types of protesters, and especially even talking to, you know, some of the other black content creators I do content with, when you hear a lot of progressives come out and say, well, they don't have a choice but to riot or break into the store, or, well, they're stealing, you know, these electronics or shoes for good reasons, you just don't realize it. I think a lot of people kind of look both ways, and it's a little bit weird that there's such a complex on the left to excuse like every single possible negative behavior from somebody as long.
Well, okay. 1, don't steal. 2, the reasons people steal on a, like, sociologically are driven by a lot of external factors, right? The reason there would be rampant looting is generally because there are people in positions of poverty. And by doing the looting, they can alleviate some of that poverty. That's generally the thing, right?
As long as they're a skin color that you're kind of in charge of protecting.
I find that very offensive.
Yeah.
I find it
It's
extremely,
really
it upsets me to hear that, because we're just like you. We just have a different skin color.
Yeah, and by the way, white people will do looting too if they're poor. Yes.
And to hear that you have to help me is offensive to me. I can do it on my own.
Well, we have to break down sometimes why these riots happen. You know, MLK once said that riots are the voice of the unheard. So if you are to address the problem and stop the riots, you have to address the underlying inequality that has historically been pervasive. You know, even if you as individual people are doing fine and you don't want anybody else to get in the way of that, that's cool, and I'm not going to get it.
Well, also, like, Sweet Myths, like, it's hard to crack people out of the idea that someone could even become a career criminal and be doing it because of the economic reality that they were dealt, you know? Like, something can start out as an act of desperation and then become, for a variety of reasons, whether, like, it's too dangerous to leave the crime organization or because it is just easier and more lucrative. Whatever the reason, right? Like, it can become something that exists beyond the point of desperation. But were we to alleviate the beginning of that process, were we to alleviate the poverty, it would then stop it from becoming like a thing that would go on, right? To become more in depth within criminal organizations or something like that, you know?
I'm not going to be the one to get in the way, but the disparities are undeniable.
So if you take pride in having like a white savior complex, what is it that you think that you're doing to save black people, and what is it that you think that you're saving black people from?
I am trying to make the world a better place through whatever means I can. And
but you're doing it on the backs of us.
I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, I actually do. I feel like you want to be a savior and you're using me to make yourself feel good. That's what I'm hearing.
How am I hurting you?
You're not letting me have my own voice. You're not letting me speak.
How? You're speaking now?
No,
you're cutting her off.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I have to.
Yeah. Well, what's happening? I mean, you're speaking right now. You're speaking right now in this particular setting. Mm-hmm. But what you're saying is, like, you took it back to riots and so forth, and it makes it seem like the only way that we as black people can have a voice is by riots, and then you need to come along and you need to say, okay,
Okay, but that wasn't, he didn't say that. He was quoting Martin Luther King Jr. Are you saying Martin Luther King Jr. was wrong? Because I would say actually Martin Luther King Jr. was very intelligent and said something deeply and profoundly true.
Oh, little black child, let me help you. Let me help you. That's offensive to me. And I feel like you're making yourself feel good about trying to help us. And
I also think that, like, when we talk about damage, I think especially when it comes to a lot of the shoplifting stuff that's going on in certain cities, you get a lot of white people that live in nice suburbs saying things like shoplifting is no big deal, that's fine, and then you'll catch YouTube videos of them later on being in a Walgreens in like a shoddy neighborhood, and they're like, man, why is the deodorant behind a locked case? It's very easy to sit behind a gated community and say, oh, well, you know, it's not a big deal, you know, they steal because they have to. Riots are the language of the unheard. I think people haven't read the full context of that quote. When MLK was saying riots were the language of the unheard, occurred and you need to address the underlying condition. He wasn't condoning the rioting. He was just understanding.
Yeah. No one is looking at a riot in this case and being like, ah, yes, this is good, indeed, yes, good. No. They're saying is, if you don't address the underlying issue, people are going to riot. And if you don't address the underlying issue of poverty, not only are you going to get riots, you're going to get looting, and you're going to get crime, and you're going to get all types of like crimes of desperation and like acts of desperation. You know, whether that's increased suicide rates, increased drug use. You know, like this happens because people feel hopeless. Doesn't come out of nowhere. Oh, thank you.
I want to pay forward the sub I got from @Kyryu216. Has anyone addressed the issue that Destiny is a girl's name?
Programmer Paul. No, we haven't addressed that Destiny is a girl's name. We haven't done that yet. But thank you for the 5 gifted tier 1 subs. That is very, very generous of you, and you guys have officially unlocked your first button. There we go.
Standing it.
Obviously, there are a bunch of white people that feel they need to be a savior, but I think there's a difference between helping and saving. Like, I don't think I would need to save black people, but I would tremendously love to help and make sure everyone has like equal outcome, or not equal outcome, but at least equal opportunity, which, in my opinion, I feel we do not have in this country.
This is awkward. Hi, guys. So I didn't step forward just because I don't want to broad brush all white liberals as having a white savior complex. I have experienced white liberals who do have that, and they're very unpleasant people. But I don't think every single white person who's a liberal or who is an activist for BLM or any of those things necessarily has a white savior complex. I think that there's a lot of white people who genuinely think that black people are oppressed and they want to help, and that's what they're told.
What it seems like to me, when most people have savior complex, regardless of whom they're trying to save, it's like they're taking real pain and real trauma and using that as a way to push this political agenda, but also to alleviate themselves of whatever guilt that they feel unnecessarily. Like, I don't know why a white person today would feel guilty for things that happened decades ago, let alone something that happened centuries ago.
I've never seen a white person say, I personally feel guilty for slavery. Maybe they're out there, but I've never heard that.
Yeah,
I'm pretty deep in the left. I also haven't heard anyone, outside of maybe like fringe, like corporate trainings, maybe, I haven't heard anyone say something along those lines.
Back in grade, when they taught us about slavery, almost every kid in my classroom would spend their entire time looking at black kids in that classroom. How was I supposed to not think, wow, these people are feeling guilty for something that they have no involvement in and I have?
Well, yeah, when you explain the concept of slavery to second graders who previously didn't know about slavery, yeah, they're gonna feel really bad that happened to people. And they're gonna also feel bad that it happened to people on the basis of their skin color. You know, like, when they find out that their ancestors may or may not have participated in this, yeah, it makes them feel bad. But like, they aren't feeling like they personally did it in second grade. Like, even the second graders who are in the process of feeling bad aren't blaming themselves for that, you know? Goodness.
Halfway
Kyryu.
to the next button.
Kyryu, please don't put yourself in a bad economic position on my account. Please. I hope you're okay. But thank you very much for the 3 gifted tier 1 subs. And yes, we are now halfway to the next button. Thank you so much.
Have no
Every kid in
involvement
my
second
classroom understood the context.
People
so.
hate feeling uncomfortable, and obviously you don't want to feel like the bad guy, and so I feel like it comes from a place of like, oh, well, like, let me make sure that I'm different, and like, I'm showing you that I want to like help you, but it comes across like, I think it can land very poorly.
I'll tell you what, stop it. Stop it. Because what happens is when you put yourself as the white savior, what you do is you elevate yourself above the black person because you feel then like you have to save us. So just stop it. Just treat everybody regular and normal. Just like I would treat you regular and normal, you treat us regular and normal rather than trying to save us.
I just got one thing I wanted to bring up earlier about taxes, because you were saying that you had your job and you were talking about how like you get the tax every time and you're like seeing your tax go up. I worked in nursing homes in 2020 COVID. The last thing that was on my mind when I watched 60 and 70-year-olds on their deathbeds suffocating to death was taxes. I was worried about health care. I didn't give a shit about taxes in that time. So when I go to work every day, that's what I see. That's what I want to fix.
I see you once again elevating yourself above the rest of us, and particularly at me, a white man elevating himself above a black person.
He called me a bootlicker. He called me a bootlicker.
Oh no, I triggered them all. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm chilling, buddy.
So what I hope comes out of this conversation is that we're all Americans, and because we're all Americans, we know that America has a bunch of problems, and I think every person here wants to solve the problems, and I think everybody is bringing what they have to the table with their ideas on how to get us to unify.
Your idea though was less taxes. Like that's why your story. That's why you became a Republican. It wasn't to make things better. It was to have less taxes for yourself. Like you straight up said that.
This kind of stuff, right? But you got something in there. Hopefully, I mean, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you have something in there that's redeeming about you that would bring all of Americans together. So I hope that we end on the note of American.
Dude, the way that he's just staring daggers at her.
An ITY.
I would like to say we're all made in the image of God, and so we're all have our inerrant worth just because we're made in his image, and we should treat each other as fellow image bearers, not just by the color of our skin. I mean, as Martin Luther King said.
He also did not like capitalism.
I think something that's really...
Alec. I don't know how effective Alec was here, but I enjoy him here.
Challenging. I've definitely been guilty in the past of throwing around the Uncle Tom word. I used to be hardcore progressive. I'm still relatively progressive. But something that I've learned as time has...
Wait, the Uncle Tom word? Is he talking about the phrase Uncle Tom, or is he talking about like the C slur? Or I'm sure Destiny said all of the slurs. Okay.
Has gone
I don't even know why I'm wondering.
Being a white person isolates you from a lot of the different types of racial struggles that people go through, and those struggles can take a lot of different forms.
I'm pretty sure Destiny has defended using like the N-word and probably would do the same for the C-word. So yeah, you know the racial slur for black people that starts with C. Yeah, that one.
Just, was my ancestor a slave, and not just is my culture bad, but sometimes in the way that, people grow and develop, right? Like, am I actually choosing these political beliefs because they mean something to me, or is it because I'm black or my parents are black? If I speak a certain...
Also, okay. Real talk. This isn't a substantial critique, but like, Destiny, bro, you're worth millions of dollars, right? Why are your shoes bad? Why'd you come wearing like sneakers? It looks like a comfy outfit. I'm just like, I don't know. Shoes bad, outfit bad. Moving on.
Certain way, am I betraying my race? If I am a political
He's
orientation,
trying to keep those
am
millions.
I a bootlicker? And I think that it's important when you're coming from a progressive point of view to understand that even though there are conservatives that are black people, you have to treat them as individuals and not just come at it with this like, you're black, you're a conservative, therefore here's like 6 or 7 different slurs that I can use against you, but they're approved because I happen to be on the progressive side.
Oh, thank God it's done. Yeah, I'll say cunt on stream. That's fine. I'd defend Destiny on Jack's shoe criticism, but I don't want to defend Destiny on anything. Look, I'm just saying, dude's insanely wealthy. Like, just dress up a little bit, man. Dress up a little bit. Like, I've watched Jubilee. I know people bring their fashion A games.